Welcome back to Beastly Mysteries. Tonight we have a chilling tale of a haunted house on Maple Street. This story was shared with us by a brave soul who endured unimaginable horrors. Let's dive into their spine-tingling experience. It all began when Sarah and her family moved into their dream home on Maple Street. Little did they know, their new abode held dark secrets that would soon come to light. When we first moved in, everything seemed perfect. The house was beautiful, the neighborhood was quiet, and it felt like the perfect place to raise our kids. But soon, strange things started happening. It started with little things: footsteps in the hallway when no one was there, doors opening and closing on their own, and cold spots in the house that made no sense. We tried to brush it off, thinking it was just the house settling. One night, my husband and I were woken up by the sound of our daughter screaming. We rushed to her room and found her standing in the corner, pointing at the closet. She kept saying there was a monster in there. We checked the closet and, of course, found nothing. But our daughter refused to sleep in her room after that night. She was terrified. Things escalated quickly. We started seeing shadows moving around the house, and objects would be thrown across rooms. The worst part was the whispering. It sounded like a woman whispering our names, and it was always so close, like she was right behind us. One evening, we were having dinner when we heard a loud bang upstairs. We rushed to the source and found our son's room completely trashed. His toys were scattered everywhere, his bed overturned, and his window wide open, though it was locked just minutes before. We knew then that whatever was in the house wasn't just a figment of our imagination. We decided to install cameras to catch whatever was causing the disturbances. What we saw in the footage was horrifying. Shadows darting across rooms, doors slamming shut by themselves, and at one point, a translucent figure standing at the foot of our bed while we slept. Desperate for help, we reached out to a local paranormal investigator. When he arrived, he immediately sensed a strong negative presence in the house. He conducted a thorough investigation and discovered that the house had a dark history. It was once owned by a woman who practiced black magic and was rumored to have died under mysterious circumstances. The investigator performed a cleansing ritual, but it seemed to anger the entity even more. That night, the activity reached its peak. We heard a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the entire house. All the lights flickered and then went out. We were plunged into darkness with only the sound of our own breathing and the faint whispers growing louder. We grabbed our children and ran out of the house, not even stopping to pack. We stayed at a hotel that night, too scared to return. The next day, we went back with the police to collect our belongings. The house was in shambles, furniture overturned, walls scratched, and that same message, "Get out," written on every mirror in the house. We moved in with my parents while we looked for a new place. The house on Maple Street was put up for sale, but no one wanted to buy it. Eventually, it was abandoned and left to decay. We've heard stories from neighbors about strange lights and sounds coming from the house at night, but no one dares to go near it. Sarah and her family were never able to return to their home on Maple Street. The house remains a chilling reminder of the horrors they faced. But there's more to this story. Sarah decided to dig deeper into the history of the house, hoping to understand what caused the haunting. I started researching the history of the house. I found out that the previous owner, the woman who practiced black magic, had a tragic past. Her husband and child had died under suspicious circumstances, and she was suspected of being involved. After their deaths, she became reclusive and was rumored to hold strange rituals in the house. I also discovered that several other families who lived in the house after her reported strange occurrences. There were reports of unexplained illnesses, accidents, and even deaths. It seemed like the house had a dark energy that affected everyone who lived there. I reached out to some of the previous owners and their relatives. One of them, a woman named Linda, shared a particularly chilling story. Her brother had lived in the house for a short period in the 1980s and experienced similar hauntings. He claimed to have seen the ghost of the woman in black, standing at the foot of his bed, staring at him with hollow eyes. He moved out shortly after, and the house remained empty for years. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that the house was cursed. The stories were too similar, the details too precise to be mere coincidence. It was as if the house had a life of its own, feeding off the fear and misery of its inhabitants. I decided to reach out to a renowned psychic medium, hoping to get some answers. She agreed to come to the house with me and perform a seance to try and communicate with the spirit. I sense a very powerful and malevolent presence here. The spirit of the woman is still trapped in this house, bound by the dark rituals she performed. She is angry, tormented, and she feeds on the fear of those who live here. Can we help her find peace? It's possible, but it will require a powerful cleansing ritual and a lot of courage. The spirit will resist, but if we succeed, we can finally free her and cleanse the house. The ritual was intense. We could feel the temperature drop, and a heavy, oppressive feeling settled over us. The candles flickered wildly, and we heard whispers and footsteps echoing through the house. At one point, we saw the figure of the woman in black, her face twisted in rage. "Be strong, Sarah. We are almost there." After what felt like hours, the oppressive feeling lifted, and the house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The psychic medium declared the house cleansed, but warned us that the energy might linger for a while. We never returned to live in the house, but I feel like we did something good by helping to free that tormented spirit. The house on Maple Street remains abandoned, but it no longer feels like a place of evil. Perhaps one day, someone will move in and make it a home again, free from the shadows of its past. Sarah and her family faced unimaginable horrors in their home on Maple Street, but their courage and determination helped to uncover the dark history and bring peace to a restless spirit. If you have your own mysterious story to share, reach out to us. Until next time, stay curious and beware of what lurks in the shadows. Sarah and David, young and full of hope, had purchased 112 Maple Street just 2 weeks earlier. It was their dream home, a place to raise their 2 young children, Emily and Ethan. They had poured their hearts and savings into restoring the old house. Emily and Ethan explored their new bedrooms while David and I admired the antique fixtures. As the sun began to set, Sarah called her family together for their first dinner in their new home. Laughter filled the air as they shared stories and dreams for the future. But as Sarah glanced up, a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye sent a shiver down her spine. The days that followed were a whirlwind of unpacking and settling into a new routine. Yet unsettling incidents began to chip away at their initial joy. One evening, as I was putting Emily to bed, I heard a faint whisper coming from the closet. I paused, listening intently. The whisper came again, soft and indistinct. "Emily, did you say something?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. Emily shook her head, her eyes wide with confusion. David, too, experienced unexplainable occurrences. While exploring the basement, he felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air grew heavy, and he saw a fleeting shadow dart across the far wall. I tried to rationalize it, attributing the cold to drafts and the shadow to a trick of the light. But as the days passed, the strange incidents became more frequent. Footsteps echoed in the hallway at night, even though the entire family was accounted for. The children, especially Emily, seemed most affected by the unsettling events. Emily, once carefree, grew withdrawn and anxious. One night I was awakened by Emily's terrified screams. I rushed to her room, my heart pounding. "Mommy, the monster!" she cried, pointing at the closet. I tried to calm her, assuring her it was just a bad dream, but a cold shiver ran down my spine. Sarah realized that whatever was happening in their home was more than just a few isolated incidents. The strange occurrences continued, each one more unsettling than the last. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. She spun around, but no one was there. Later that night, I heard a soft humming coming from the attic. I cautiously made my way upstairs, each creaking step sending a jolt of fear through me. The attic was dark and dusty, illuminated only by a sliver of moonlight. The humming seemed to be coming from a rocking chair swaying gently back and forth. I quickly scanned the rest of the attic, but there was nothing there. The whispers that Sarah had first heard in Emily's closet grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to be everywhere now, in the walls, under the floorboards, whispering their names. Desperate to find a rational explanation, I blamed the old plumbing, faulty wiring, anything but the truth. But the evidence was mounting, becoming impossible to ignore. One morning, Sarah discovered strange symbols etched into the condensation on the bathroom mirror. Panic welled up inside me. Someone or something was trying to communicate with them. One night, David and Sarah were awakened by the sound of their bedroom door creaking open. We lay there, frozen in fear, as the temperature in the room plummeted. A cold, oppressive presence filled the air. A shadowy figure materialized at the foot of our bed. The figure stood motionless for a moment, its presence radiating an aura of pure malice. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished. Terror gripped our family. Sleep became impossible. Desperate for answers, Sarah delved into the history of their home. She spent countless hours in the local library searching for any clues. I discovered that the house had a long and troubled past, filled with tragedy and loss. Rumors circulated about dark rituals and strange disappearances. Armed with this newfound knowledge, we knew we could no longer ignore the truth. They had to find a way to fight back. Driven to desperation, they sought help from a paranormal investigator named Samuel. Samuel listened intently as they recounted their experiences. He agreed to visit their home. Samuel arrived at dusk, his presence a strange comfort. He moved through the house with a quiet confidence. He ran his hand along the cold stone of the fireplace mantel, paused in the doorway of Emily's room. The air grew heavy with anticipation as he worked. Samuel requested access to the attic, sensing a concentration of energy. As they climbed the stairs, Sarah shared the information she had uncovered. Samuel listened intently, nodding slowly. Inside the attic, they discovered a trunk filled with old journals and strange talismans. The journals spoke of a woman consumed by grief and driven to desperate measures. She had delved into forbidden knowledge, unleashing a force that had haunted the house ever since. The air crackled with tension as Samuel prepared to confront the entity. He instructed Sarah and David to gather in the living room. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Samuel's voice, low and guttural, filled the room. A cold spot descended upon the room, the air shimmering. Slowly, the shadowy outline of a figure began to emerge. Even in its incomplete form, they could sense the raw power and malevolent intent. The shadowy figure exuded an aura of malice so potent that Sarah felt physically ill. Samuel, his face pale but resolute, held his ground. He raised a hand, his voice echoing through the silent house. "Identify yourself," he commanded. The shadowy figure writhed and pulsed, its form growing more defined. Sarah thought she could make out the faint outline of a woman. The air crackled with energy, and a low growl seemed to emanate from the entity. She wanted to run, but a flicker of hope kept her rooted to the spot. Samuel reached out to a trusted colleague, a psychic medium named Eleanor. Eleanor, with her gentle eyes and serene demeanor, moved through the house like a whisper of smoke. In the living room, Eleanor closed her eyes and entered a deep trance. She described a woman, young and beautiful, consumed by grief over the loss of her child. The woman had made a deal with a dark force, a desperate bargain to bring her child back. But the ritual had gone horribly wrong, twisting her love into something dark and vengeful. She was trapped, bound to the house by her own pain and rage. The cleansing ritual, Eleanor explained, would be dangerous. A delicate dance between the realms of the living and the dead. The entity, fueled by years of anger and despair, would resist their efforts to free her. But it was a risk they had to take, for the sake of Sarah's family, and for the tormented soul trapped within the house. As twilight descended, casting long shadows across the lawn, they gathered in the living room. Samuel, his face etched with determination, drew a circle of protection on the hardwood floor with a mixture of salt and herbs. Candles flickered at the cardinal points, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Eleanor, her voice strong and clear, began the ancient chant, her words weaving a tapestry of light and purification. Samuel, his eyes closed in concentration, added his own energy to hers, the air thickening with a palpable power. The temperature in the room plummeted, the air growing heavy and oppressive. The candles sputtered and hissed, their flames dancing wildly. And then, with a suddenness that made Sarah's heart leap into her throat, the shadowy figure of the woman reappeared within the circle. The figure, no longer a vague outline, was now horrifyingly clear. The woman's face, contorted in a mask of rage and despair, was a ghastly white, her eyes burning with an unnatural light. Her long black hair whipped around her like living tendrils, and her dress, once pristine, was now little more than tattered rags. A guttural scream, filled with unimaginable pain and fury, tore from the entity's throat. The sound sent shivers down Sarah's spine, a sound that spoke of centuries of suffering and torment. She wanted to look away, to hide, but a morbid fascination held her captive. The air crackled with energy as Samuel and Eleanor poured their strength into the ritual. The shadowy figure writhed and contorted, struggling against the forces that sought to bind it. The temperature in the room plummeted further, and a bone-chilling wind seemed to whip through the house, rattling the windows in their frames. With a final, ear-splitting shriek, the entity erupted in a blinding flash of white light. The house shuddered violently, as if shaken to its very core. A deafening roar, like the sound of 1,000 voices screaming in unison, echoed through the rooms. Then silence. The candles sputtered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Silence, heavy and absolute, descended upon the house. The air, moments before thick with energy and dread, now felt strangely still, empty. David, do you feel that? It's so quiet now. Sarah and David stood in the darkened room, their eyes struggling to adjust to the gloom. The only sound was the frantic pounding of their hearts. Yes, Sarah, it's like everything just stopped. The events of the past few minutes played out in their minds. Had it really happened? Was the entity truly gone? Do you think it's over? Is it really gone? David, his arm still protectively around Sarah's shoulders, took a tentative step forward. His foot landed on the hardwood floor with a soft thud. The normalcy of the sound sent a wave of relief washing over them. I think so, Sarah. I really think it is. They clung to each other, trembling with exhaustion and lingering fear. But as the silence stretched on, a fragile sense of peace began to blossom within them. The days that followed were a blur of activity as David and I, with a newfound sense of purpose, set about restoring our home to its former glory. The oppressive atmosphere that had permeated the house for so long had lifted, replaced by a sense of lightness, of new beginnings. Yet, the events of the cleansing ritual lingered in our minds, a stark reminder of the darkness that had once threatened to consume us. Sarah, seeking answers, closure, found herself drawn back to the attic, to the dusty trunk that held the secrets of the house's past. With each photograph she examined, each journal entry she deciphered, the story of the woman who had once haunted their home came into sharper focus. I saw a young mother, radiant with love for her child, her eyes reflecting a joy that mirrored my own. I saw the same woman, years later, her face etched with grief, her eyes hollowed by a loss so profound that it had driven her to the brink of madness. I felt a surge of empathy for this woman, this stranger whose pain had resonated through the years, reaching out to touch our lives. The journals spoke of a love so fierce, so absolute, that it had blinded the woman to reason. She had sought to cheat death, to defy the natural order, and in doing so, had unleashed a force she could not control. I discovered that the woman had lost her child to a sudden illness, a tragedy that had shattered her world. Desperate to have her child back, she had turned to forbidden knowledge, seeking solace in the dark arts. But her efforts had been in vain. Her child remained lost to her, and the rituals had twisted her love into something dark and vengeful. The entity that haunted the house was a heartbroken mother, forever searching for the child she could never reclaim. Life, gradually, returned to normal. The laughter of children once again filled the rooms of 112 Maple Street. The shadows that had once seemed so menacing now seemed playful, dancing across the walls in the warm glow of the fireplace. The house, no longer a place of fear, became a sanctuary, a haven filled with the warmth of family, the echoes of laughter, and the comforting aroma of baking bread. The events of that summer faded into memory, a chilling reminder of the fragility of life, the thin veil that separates the known from the unknown. S1, David and I, our bond strengthened by the ordeal we had faced together, cherished each moment with a newfound appreciation. We had stared into the abyss of the unknown and emerged, shaken but unbroken. We had faced our fears, confronted the darkness, and in doing so, had found a deeper understanding of ourselves, our love, and the enduring power of hope. But even in the stillness of the night, when the shadows lengthened and the wind whispered through the trees, Sarah felt no fear. She knew that the house on Maple Street held no more secrets, no more darkness. It was theirs now, a place of healing, a testament to the enduring power of love and the triumph of light over darkness. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the house on Maple Street still held whispers of its past. In the quiet of the afternoon, she thought she heard a lullaby, a melody tinged with love and sorrow. I saw the echoes of grief in the nursery's chipped paint and the worn floorboards of the hallway. It was a lingering sadness, a reminder of a mother's love and her despair. She carried the story of the woman and her child, a cautionary tale whispered on the wind, a reminder of grief's power, the allure of forbidden knowledge and cherishing life. 112 Maple Street stood, no longer haunted, but with a story to tell.